Me.
I don't know about that.
And we need a party of compassion. We need to have a party that is pro-life, not pro-birth. You got to have both.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. So, okay, check this out, guys. Big, huge shout out to Bill Miranda, who was on our show last week.
Excellent.
He kind of mopped the floor with you about illegal immigration.
I got to tell you that he has done so much work to build the Hispanic community in the city of Santa Clarita. You know, we're looking at 1/3 of our citizens now come from some background that's Latino, Hispanic, and some variation. They may be second, third generation, but here's the bottom line. As a man, as a former served military graduate, spent his time, served this country, and has done so much as a founder of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for this city. He's done so much to do that and build representation, and he's a fiscal conservative, cares a lot about the people in this community. Very impressed.
All right. Hey, you got the endorsement from Mark Murphy. Check that out. Bill! Oh, man, my voice cracked there. That was really embarrassing. So I got to admit, I came into the studio today, and I'm a little bit intimidated. We got a really cool show figured out today. We're going to be talking, of course, we'll be cleaning up the argument on border security. We're going to be talking a little bit about the separations. I've got an article on who gives more, Democrats or Republicans.
Okay, we got to pass that down around because right now we're talking about compassion. There's so much going on the border.
Which he doesn't like.
We need to pay attention to the facts. We can't make this stuff up. It's been amazing.
Because the facts show that Republicans give more to charity. But I got to say, this is intimidating, Mark. And one of the things I love about you is,
that's just this week.
You come prepared. If you guys aren't watching on Facebook Live, you have got to tune in and look at, there is an entire stack of newspaper clippings. And for any of you guys that think print is dead, no way. I've got about 3 pounds of paper that are in Mark's file folder right now with highlights, things that are circled. So I got to be honest with you. The floor is yours to open up. We can talk about what I want to talk about a little bit later because it looks like you came a little bit locked and loaded. So,
well, as a Democrat, we have to deal in facts. I was so impressed to hear that the president was speaking to a group in Wisconsin. He was talking about the last time they captured Wisconsin for the president, a Republican president, was in 1952 for Eisenhower. Now, he forgot about 1956.
Wait, get out of town. Was it really 1952?
He forgot about 1956 with Ike. He forgot about 2 times with Reagan.
Well, I was
he
going to say Reagan
2
got
times
it twice,
with Bush.
Right?
In other words, facts don't matter. So,
it's not that it don't matter. It's that he's not a politician. He's not well-versed.
He's a businessman. Numbers count.
Yeah, they count.
We live in the world of numbers as businessmen.
Well, now hold on a second.
Bottom
Hold on a
line,
second.
Numbers count for everything.
No, but there are plenty of times where Barack Obama misspoke. There was all kinds of hilarious examples.
I heard Thomas Jefferson misspoke too. So what the heck? We're talking about the.
So that's just misspeaking. Who cares? There was one time Obama said there was 14 colonies, and it was an accident. We all know he was referencing 14 days of the week. There's lots of times where people have misspoke.
Okay, wait a second. There's a difference between misspoke and continually putting out, false information. So, for example, let's talk about the zero policy, zero tolerance policy on the border. Republicans don't really like to talk about that because what that means
Well, actually,
is...
wait, before we talk about that,
we don't want to talk about that.
Well, no, we will. We will talk about that. I was going to get to that later, but you wanted to speak about the big talk of the town right now is the Supreme Court.
Of course.
And his appointee, all right?
Yeah.
Now, whenever asked, well, why do you support Trump? One of the very first things I would always say was, I think he's the only one capable of beating Hillary Clinton, and somebody needs to appoint our next Supreme Court justice. I don't think too many people actually expected it to be a 2-for-1 deal.
Oh, I think he's got the chance of probably putting in 2 more beyond that.
It looks pretty intense. And if he gets reelected, I wouldn't say scary, I'd say relieving. Because he's doing really good jobs. Neil Gorsuch, bipartisan excellence. He had an amazing record. There's a reason why it went through. Neil Gorsuch, had he been appointed by Barack Obama, everybody would agree is a really good job. And
he is a Republican conservative, and he went through the easy. A Cub Scout could have passed.
No,
through
he's
the
not, because I got to tell you,
at the court. I mean,
judges it's a bipartisan position.
It was a joke. And I listened to the questions and the way he was being handled, and I went, "This isn't a nomination for Supreme Court justice. This looks like he's going to be the party handler for the president."
Wait, hold on.
It made no sense.
Okay, hold on.
And what happened to the man who was put up before him by Barack Obama? The Republicans would not bring him forward and actually give him a review. So they sat on an opening for the year. And I look at today and I'm going, so let's sit on an opening for another year. Let's make this difficult, because we got to make sure that these people are highly qualified, truly vetted, and that we keep some balance in the court. Because if you want to know, let's see, of 7 presidential elections, 6 of them, the majority voted for a Democrat. Now, because of the rigging of the system and
gerrymandering,
and the rigging, the way they manipulate it, they managed to somehow put a Republican in office by challenging them or doing whatever else they do. But the majority, 6 out of 7 times, voted liberal. So we have to have a court that should have some balance to it. Let's not forget that's how it was originally established.
Wait, so you're saying that to maintain balance, we have to be voting 6 out of 7 times liberal?
Well, that's what the entire United States would say. Because right now we are the majority. But you know what? It isn't that way. So let's look at...
Wait, but you can't say you're the majority when obviously we just had an election disproving that.
No, the election of Donald
Trump was...
We won't count the 3 million illegal aliens that apparently voted fraudulently that the president has never been able to identify, despite the committee that he sent on the witch hunt to find them. It had totally made up. But here's the thing. I mean, I guess they all showed up for the big celebration when he was the inaugural. But what I really want to look at is the fact that we need to have moderation. We need to pick somebody who is at least a moderate Republican or conservative in terms of their judicial actions. And we already have people talking about overturning Roe versus Wade, eliminating gay marriages. Yes, but the fact
it could get improved. I think Roe versus Wade could get improved. But this idea that we're going to take away abortions and we're going to turn into the land of the handsmaid tale is absolute hysteria that is irresponsible of the media to even engage in.
It's not the media. We're hearing people talk about this who are leaders in the conservative movement because they are salivating with the idea that they can do this. They want to put women so that they cannot have equal wages, and that they won't get the time or the living wage. They're already cut out their medical care. So, hey, why can't they do this?
Okay, so wait, hold on. You know how progressives want to stop you and they say, unpack your white privilege? So I'm just going to say...
I'm just an Irishman. What do I know?
So I'm going to say, wait, we got to unpack all your accusations there, because there was 5, and we're going to get to all of them. And I want to be able to remember the first one before I get to the 5th one.
Well, let's get to the inauguration. I mean, come on. Let's talk facts. That was fun.
Well, hold on. Okay.
Photographs don't lie.
So this is what honestly worries me about modern politics is I read when Donald Trump actually did what I considered a very politically ingenious move. The very first time when he was a candidate, when he published who he thinks he would appoint as his Supreme Court appointees, that was a genius move. Just like Barack Obama said,
it was a good thing to do.
Yeah, he said, Barack Obama said the best political decision I ever made was appointing... not John Boehner, I almost said John Boehner, Joe Biden as my running mate. He actually is on the record as having said he thought that was the best political decision he made. I think the best political decision so far that Donald Trump made was disclosing his list. And even back then, as hated candidate Trump, USA Today
we love him as much as he loves the fake media.
Well, hold on. They came out and they said his list represents people in their independent analysis, because back then he wasn't as hated. He was only half hated, okay? They said...
Just ask Ted Cruz.
Yeah, they said represented mainstream people within mainstream jurisprudence. And now I am getting nothing but Twitter feeds and Facebook comments and newspaper articles about how all 25 of these Juris Doctorates and these judges are nothing but closeted neo-Nazis that we didn't know were secretly penetrating the American judicial system for the past 50 years, and we're all going to turn into, like I said, the Handmaid's Tale, because we're going to be run by a Supreme Court activist who secretly has swastika tattoos. I mean,
and did you find out there actually are some women in that list, and it is scary. We might have another woman on the Supreme Court, and some of my conservative friends are running for the hills because this is their end of life as they know it.
No, that's a misrepresentation. Now, this is what worries me.
But it is true. He actually has a relatively balanced list. These are more, in many cases, you said the right thing, and that is he picked people who had the experience, who had the background, who probably had a more moderate perspective. Many of them are backing the more introduction laws that we had.
Well, if Neil Gorsuch came from that list,
that's where they're at.
If he came from that list, how can you say that he's just a Republican sellout and he was a bad choice?
I'm not saying that he was a bad choice, but he was a conservative. And if we look at it this way,
well, what's wrong with having a conservative on the court? We need more conservative principles right now. We're a bankrupt state.
They gave us Citizen United. If I need to go no further, which forced the rest of all politicians end up spending large amounts of money, even including the local elections for congressmen, even having to spend more on the city council. I mean, we're talking about it ramped up the amount of money being spent, and it particularly put the control in the hands of the big billionaires and the foundations, the conservative and the liberal foundations. So, in effect, it took the election spending thing away from us. And that was an example. And Justice Kennedy was one of those who voted for that. And so you can't simply say he was a liberal. He was not a liberal. He was a conservative. There was no question about that. The issue is there always is fear when you have a court that is running 5-4. You would love to have a court that's more balanced. And the problem is...
Okay, now hold on a second. I hate that word more balanced, only because... And this is really what frustrates me, is it seems like Senate Democrats, and also just Democrats in general now, hold that word hostage unless they get a liberal judge.
Oh, I think all the senators hold this as hostage.
No, but see, now you mentioned the big...
It's just right now the Republicans are controlled. Why are they so afraid? Why are they so afraid?
I don't think they are afraid. I think this is hysteria.
They want this through prior to the November election.
No.
So let's just all agree. Let's elect this person. Let's put this person through in January, February. If you guys are not afraid of that, I think that would show that you're not afraid of the new tide that's coming. Because, hey, I don't know if I see this red tide, but I heard there's a red wave coming. If that red wave comes, then you guys have nothing to worry about.
I swear, sometimes I feel like I just need a pause button. Okay, let me unpack this really fast. First, there is no blue wave coming. I'm going to make a T-shirt out of that. Okay, there is no blue wave coming. And second off, I am almost ashamed to repeat this because I think so many people have probably heard it so much this week. It is an absolute false comparison to compare the desire to wait to appoint, I believe it was Merrick Garland was his name, to wait to appoint the Supreme Court appointee of Barack Obama until after a presidential election. First off, I think they should have taken it up. I'm a purist. Yeah, I believe that Congress is supposed to behave as Congress, and Merrick Garland should have been considered. Republicans set a precedence of waiting until after a presidential election, but for Chuck Schumer to come out and say, oh, well, any appointee, should be waited until after the election season. Well, that sets up a really bad problem, and this show is called Problem Solver Politics. Chuck Schumer, by demanding that we wait until the end of a midterm election instead of a presidential election, which is far more significant. I think waiting until after the presidential election is a bad choice anyway. But if that is the precedent, that is far different than waiting until the midterm election, because if you start establishing a protocol of only allowing appointees to be considered in not the year before a midterm election, you are forcing, because there's only 2 years in between, you're forcing the Congress to only accept appointees within months of a guy being elected. So you're establishing a precedence in which, guys, everybody knows there's a learning curve when you get into office. And a lot of these socialist guys, I can't wait until this socialist that took out the number 2 Democrat in the House of Representatives.
Awesome. Absolutely
Oh
awesome.
my gosh. Yeah. Only in America can a socialist, can a communist, I mean, let's just be honest, a communist be openly.
She is not a communist.
Oh yeah. There's no difference between democratic socialism and communism. There's like literally no difference. It's just like when I take an AR-15 and I ask somebody, can you explain to me a difference between
You're talking about a military man who had to fight communist. There is a difference between
an ideology,
communist and socialist, I can assure you, because I was supporting a socialist state against the communists, and I can clearly tell you there is a difference. And particularly if you look at her background and hear what her platform
was. Well, let me finish my sentence. We'll argue about how democratic socialism is communism.
Later. This has nothing to do with setting a precedent. This has nothing to do about getting used to it. It's payback. It's very much payback, because when you had control of the House and the Senate, you wanted also to have control of the president before you put through your
Wait, hold on.
In this case, let's take a risk. If you guys are so confident that you're going to hang on to the House and the Senate, then you should have no fear of waiting till December.
No, but hold on. But this defeats the purpose. This idea that you have to wait until after elections is so toxic because it strips our elected officials of the jobs they're supposed to do. And Congress, despite its parliamentary games and despite its division, it used to be that when a president was elected, we got down to the job of fulfilling the appointed positions in our government. And it got a little bit difficult with Barack Obama, but it got a lot bit difficult with Donald Trump, to such a degree that government is not functioning at 100%, not at 90%. It's functioning barely at 75 to 85% because this resistance is poking holes in this boat that all of us are sitting in. I mean, honestly, I'm sorry, but the department head of the transportation division, who's in charge of making sure that all the postal service trucks get gasoline in them, is not a reason to boycott Trump. Okay, like, let's let him appoint that, and let's let that person get down to the job of making sure our mailmen have freaking gas.
This has been a self-inflicted gunshot wound. First off, he fires more people than he hires,
which is a sign of health in government.
You look at the turnover in the White House and how many slots are empty.
You've been wanting to fire Donald Trump since he was elected.
What they did in the State Department, what I'd love to surround him with people that have some intelligence and competency, but here's the issue. He has so few people there, and he himself is not even presenting enough people and candidates because he doesn't have the list. He doesn't fall back and use many of the people that were already in the party and already trained professionals. And look what they did to the State Department. They literally gutted the State Department, and they wonder why we have problems.
Okay. We're going to have to go to a commercial break here. Before we go to the commercial break, I'm going to clear for our listeners the fact that the State Department was the most bloated department that was overspending all of its allotted resources in the most frivolous manners, that by making it more efficient doesn't mean you are gutting it. If you have a misbehaved child who has a $50 a week allowance and is using it to buy weed and guns, if you take him down to a $20 allowance so all he can buy is his food,
are you talking about
you
the White
haven't
House?
Gutted him. You have actually just managed him.
I'm sorry. You're talking about the Department of Education. Got it.
This is Problem Solver Politics. It's 726. Don't go away.
Looking for the best return on your investment? Do you want your hard-earned dollars stretched to do the most good for your community? That means that out of every dollar donated, a full 99 cents goes directly to the need being addressed. Help the Children is in Santa Clarita, helping Santa Clarita families and other Santa Clarita charities. When compared to more than 1.2 million charities in America, Help the Children is rated the 7th most efficient charity in the nation, operating on a 1% overhead, and we receive no government funding for our operations in the community. If you are looking to donate to the good of the Santa Clarita community, please consider partnering with Help the Children. What is donated specifically for Santa Clarita is kept in Santa Clarita and will help over 5,000 families and over 10 other agencies. Please visit our website and or call our office to make a difference in our awesome town community. 702-8852, helpthechildren.org.
Every year, thousands of local children, teens, and adults receive treatment at the Child and Family Center for depression, anger, anxiety, abuse, thoughts of suicide, and drug and alcohol addictions. Our professional staff provides outpatient services at office locations, in the home, the community, and on many elementary, junior, and high school campuses throughout our valley. If you need help, contact Child and Family Center at 259-9439 or childfamilycenter.org. Improving lives, one family at a time.
Hey, what's going on? It's Aaron Del Torre checking in with today's weather forecast. Expect to see clear skies throughout the entire weekend. Today you'll see daytime highs range anywhere between the upper 80s and lower 90s. Overnight lows tonight going to drop down to the lower 60s. Be sure to keep up with all the latest local news at hometownstation.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at KHTS Radio. And be sure to sign up for the email newsletter at hometownstation.com.
All right. This is Problem Solver Politics. This is Cardon Ellis with Mark Murphy. Mark Murphy.
Hey, I've been having a lot of fun trying to explain to him why the party of compassion is on the rise.
Okay.
The blue wave is coming.
Okay, right now, I am betting you. I think it's against some rule in my religion to do bets just because my mom would never let me bet as a kid. I don't know if there's a scripture against it somewhere, but I know most Christian people say, if I were a betting man.
Well,
and then
I'm a Methodist. We bet.
We bet? Okay, cool. So
it's called bingo, but you know what? We'll go for it.
Mormon bet versus Methodist bet right here.
Okay.
I'm betting you $5 right now that there's no blue wave that sweeps. There might be blue individual elections, but no blue wave. I think the House is maintained, the Senate is maintained.
Oh, I'm confident that because of the mistakes being made by not only the president, but Congress and the Senate, and their incompetence in getting things done like they've just shown related to the border, I'm absolutely convinced that we're going to see one or two of those houses change hands.
Okay, at 7:30 exactly. Look at that, right there on the clock.
7:30.
If you're watching on Facebook Live, our clock just literally turned to 7:30 on the absolute dot. We're in the bottom of the hour right here. A bet was made, and I don't know if this is against FCC rules, so I will check. I don't think we can become bookies on air and start like saying, 2-1, 3-1, just call in, give us your social security
we may not
number.
even be able to make it a penny.
I'm going to check what the FCC rules are. I'm beginning a wager on air. If it is possible, I think we're going to start engaging. But anyway, I don't think a blue wave is coming. We're going to finish our argument here. That we were just discussing, for those of you just tuning in, Mark Murphy, he had a midlife crisis, made a very poor decision, and he left the Republican Party and became a Democrat. It's been quite useful because I have somebody to argue with, and to be honest with you, you ever watch the old Russian cartoons and the old Russian talk shows during the Cold War before Perestroika? There was always the pro-Russian who just beat up on the buffoonery of the supposed capitalist. So he's the one that gets beat up on.
Now, this is a man
days.
who does recognize that he did vote for GW and also voted for his dad and also voted for Mr. Reagan, the president
Well, those were good decisions.
Okay, absolutely good. And I also supported and was working for Mr. Nixon. And along the way, I also actually voted for somebody by the name of McCain. But along the way, I also voted for some wonderful Democratic presidents who did such an outstanding job, and
like
one
FDR,
who should have. Thank you. I'm almost that old. But and one more but I would have voted for Ike. I loved Ike, but one more that I absolutely wish was in office right now.
Don't you dare say it.
And that is, and that is Ted Cruz. But anyway, so life changes. We move on. You had to get through it and just work with it. But what we're really seeing is the dysfunction. I don't care whether they are Democrats or Republicans. Neither of the House, Senate, and the President's office seem to be able to get their act together. They can't even get the new laws through related to specific pieces of the issue related to the border.
Okay, here's part of the problem here. I'd love your opinion on this, because part of the reason why I have Mark on the show is because I can't stand sellouts. I mean, I absolutely hate sellouts. I don't like people that are so blinded by party loyalty that they can't see the humanism behind a certain situation. Both Democrats and Republicans. I mean, I butt heads so hard on issues of homelessness with your average establishment Republicans that like they think I'm some Bernie Sanders guy. When in reality, all I am is a compassionate human being that's looked at the numbers behind this and that the economic ideas of, well, if you build it, they will come. No, it's not that way. Usual economic principles that apply in all kinds of other facets like clockwork of life do not apply with homelessness. So I hate sellouts. Mark Murphy is not a sellout. However, I do find myself, even as well-read and intelligent as you are, this is a huge frustration. I'd like to see if you've noticed the same thing. Is it used to be when we came on talk shows, and I'm talking about by used to be, like the first Bush administration, a whopping 20 years ago, all right? So not that far ago, even I'd say in the Clinton years, that facts were uniform.
Yes.
In the sense that if you came on a talk show,
facts are facts.
Okay, the CBO came outside with these facts, and then there was this constant like freedom versus security argument. But at the end of the day, since we were both hashing off of the same fact sheet, then the argument was sound, was resolute, and there was a much, much broader center group of moderate Democrats and Republicans. In fact, I mean, to be honest with you, if you look at the speeches of Bill Clinton, you look at the speeches of first-year Barack Obama, you look at the speeches of any Republican or Democrat of the past 50 years, and they were almost in the exact same ballpark. It really, to a certain extent back then, didn't matter if you were a Democrat or Republican because the differences were small. Because
go way back. Go back. You watch Truman, you watch Eisenhower. They got a lot accomplished working with the other side. In some cases, like in Ike's case, his own party would not support him. He got the Democrats and a few renegade Republicans, and that's how he got so much of the things he did through.
Yes.
And this has happened again at Clinton. Perfect example. He got more done working with the Republicans than working against them. And you know what was sound? Every time we see that kind of sound leadership,
so
we see success.
Yeah, we do. And that's what I'm looking for. But my biggest frustration, is now that fact sheet is split. And I feel like when I have conversations with people, even just like you, in between the hours, when I mentioned, for example, that it's just scientifically proven that Republicans give 30 to 200% more, right?
I deny the fact immediately.
You deny the fact immediately because it can't possibly be real that the party of compassion is not truly compassionate.
It's a question of source and what you call. But this is the good part. How
do we get over that, though?
This is very, very difficult.
What's the fix for that, dude? Because honestly, it's like I feel whenever I engage in political conversation nowadays, and I know we got to get back to talking about the Supreme Court. We got to get back to talk about nitty-gritty details. And this is kind of just theory, and it is more sociology than it is politics. But my curiosity is it feels like whenever I get in a political conversation, I have to spend the first 90% of my breath re-educating the person on what the real facts actually are before I can tell them why their point of view may be skewed, when in the old days we were always just knowing the facts and then talking about the point of view. So like, how do we get the fact sheet in one? Like, what can our listeners and us do to actually get the fact sheet as one back together? I am stumped. What do you think?
Well, I think that's one of the biggest problems we have facts, and then we have this thing called alternative facts. And believe me, the Trump administration did not create the first alternative facts. We've watched that I'll tell you, during the whole Iraq war, we saw them would come together and both Republicans and Democrats put together information. They chose to listen to specific points that were maybe like 3 facts within a spectrum of 20 that said that the Iraqis were backing and had the weapons of mass destruction. When you go through analysis and everything else, and I used to be in that business of hunting down bombs and all that great stuff and taking them back from the people who weren't supposed to have them, the fun on it is you've got to deal with reality, not with just a small selection of intelligence. So they took the numbers and they corrupted them and they made them support their facts. In other words, that became the facts we dealt with. This went all the way through the war in Iraq and has led into the war in Afghanistan. Both parties are responsible. It's just been really unusual in that when the current administration pushed this concept of facts really don't matter, we have new facts, and anyone that disagrees with you...
I don't think they're saying facts don't matter. I think
they just don't deal in real facts,
well,
and they come up with this thing called alternative facts. As soon as you do that...
No,
you
that's
make
counterpoint.
You make it... Well, they make it... That's their terms. You make it legitimate to question facts and say we have an alternative set of facts. And they do exist. What we saw was a lot of money put together by the foundations on both the conservative and the liberal side were to create more what I would call marketing of false information or questionable information. We saw that in so many categories, whether it was in atmospheric science, what was happening with the energy side, also what would happen with vaccinations. We saw a lot of false information that was put out and said, this is now facts. No, it wasn't. It was a small spectrum of facts of many different studies. And in essence, if you go with the majority, it should not have been chosen.
You mentioned how it was actually a registered Democrat over 41 years ago that started the untruth that vaccinations cause autism.
Both sides have done this. Both sides have done this.
Okay, there are...
And they created foundations
for every one.
Well,
hold on a second. For every one right-winger, homeschooler, wacky mom that doesn't vaccinate her kids because some strange interpretation that Jesus says not to, all right... For every one of those, there's 15 Democrats that don't vaccinate their kids because they're completely drinking the Kool-Aid of fake news.
I
that
agree.
there's this widespread hold on, let me finish.
Society on both sides that should not, who lead us in the wrong direction. In other words, they made bad choices.
I only mention this just because now I was reading this report the other day that I don't remember the exact disease, but Westwood now supposedly has the same amount of measles as Chihuahua, Mexico.
Yeah.
Brentwood, some of these liberal parts of LA are starting to get such bad cases.
I've seen some of the information, and the studies are hilarious. And I say hilarious because
it's sad.
It's dangerous. It's absolutely dangerous.
It's hilarious if it weren't so sad.
Exactly. And
that we're eating ourselves alive with fake news.
And people, and in that case, there's other areas. Someone always is hurt by this. If you falsify the information related to how many people showed up for an inauguration, I don't think anybody gets hurt. If you falsify when the last time someone switched a state from a Democrat to a Republican, I don't think anybody gets hurt with that information.
Okay, hold on.
But when you do information like the border statistics, or you have false information related to spending on health care or how it relates to vaccinations, people get hurt.
I got to move on to making fun of Kamala Harris here for a second. Okay. I will clear up for our listeners, though, some of the things you said. I don't believe that it's...
You're not into getting shots or vaccinations? No. I can't believe that. No wonder we have a problem in Santa Clarita.
No, okay. So I don't think it is fair that everybody paints Donald Trump as saying he's got a war on facts, when his war has been pretty much against the media, and the media is biased. When he says fake news, I really think that what he's really saying and what all his supporters are hearing is hyper-biased news. Because I've noticed in my lifetime, it used to be when I was a kid and I was first taught about bibliographies and works cited pages. I remember my 6th grade teacher at Santa Clarita Elementary, Mrs. Pace, bless her soul, all right, was literally sitting in front of me and she said, "What's a primary source, kids?" And she actually took out a newspaper clipping from the New York Times in the 1930s and said, "This is an excellent example of a primary source that's reputable," because journalists are required to have certain ethical standards about reporting news. And it used to be that a news article printed in the 80s was considered a reputable news source. Forget it.
Oh, no.
Forget it.
That actually
nowadays
hasn't changed as much as what we now with this whole idea of podcast.
You got 20 seconds because I got to go to
so many people jumping into podcasts who have no reputable information. They just have a point of view. They aren't being fact checked by anybody.
But even the majors are.
Oh, the majors.
Even the majors. The New York Times is hyper biased.
They are not biased, but they are now in a war with the man who wants to shut them down, and that is a violation of the First Amendment.
Okay, so I really don't know how to recover from this when my co-host thinks that the New York Times is not biased. So we're just going to move on. I literally think people are actually switching to local issues, and I think the independent movement isn't the independent movement. I think it's the apathetic movement. There's a reason why over 60% of Democrat children do not register as Democrats. Sorry, no, of Republican children do not re-register as Republicans, and 74% of Democrat children don't re-register as Democrats because I think they're just so sick of the partisanship that they either become apathetic to politics, which is the worst thing that can happen, or else they only focus on local or anecdotal news. I actually give a lot of credit to KHTS because I have actually found that though I know there's different political leanings amongst the staff, that generally most of their reporting is from having been there, not ideological, but actually having been there, sticking to the facts. And also the reason why I think social media news and the propensity for some fake stories on social media is such a possibility is because people only want to resort to social media for their news because the garbage that all of the big, whether it's USA Today, New York Times, the Gazette, the whatevers, they're pumping out is just as biased and unpredictable as what your friend said he saw. So, I mean...
I completely disagree with you, and that's part of the problem is when you label the major institutions as that, who really do make a phenomenal effort to fact-check their sources.
Whoa, hold on.
And to work through it. Yes, they have a point of view.
I've been in the news.
But they do
And the Times,
that.
this is totally based off of my reality. The times I have been in the news, I can 100% testify that there has been an absolute ideological twist towards what has been reported on me. And I believe a certain proof of this is just recently the prophet of the Mormon Church died. His name was Thomas S. Monson. He was on the board of the Boy Scouts. He is a man who is a World War II veteran who has a lifetime of star-studded service towards the poor in this world. He actually took the Mormon Church from being... having more members inside the state of Utah to all of a sudden having more members outside of the United States of America, and they took it to the largest distributor of clothing to the third world. Despite this massive record,
I went to where he was born.
You went to where he was born. Good job.
And I'm not a Mormon.
Okay, good job.
I just admire the man.
We can fix that. No, I'm just kidding. So he got a scathing obituary from the New York Times that was so unfair. And then you go and you read Fidel Castro's obituary, and you think Justin Bieber died.
It's just like Vladimir Putin. He's become this wonderful man that's balanced, and we need to trust him.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
And just like that leader of North Korea, he's a reasonable man now. He's okay.
And the last
he takes good care of his family and his people.
Okay, you get the closing argument, but basically what I'm doing now is I think most people, just like in the last election, most people were voting against something. I don't know a single Democrat that said, dude, Hillary Clinton, I want to hang out with her on a Friday night. Those pantsuits, I want to switch.
We were voting for Bill.
Yeah, we were voting for Bill. Everybody was afraid of Donald Trump. You either operate out of fear or you operate out of faith. And I think everybody that voted for Hillary was fearful of Donald Trump. And I know that the vast majority of Republicans that were voting for Donald Trump weren't thinking, man, this guy's great. I want to babysit my kids. No, what they were thinking was, I am fearful of Hillary Clinton. I don't think my company could have survived another 4 years of the same democratic socialist tendencies, right? So out of that fear, most people voted against Hillary Clinton.
No, most people, but yes, I agree with that. But more people voted for Hillary Clinton than voted for Donald Trump.
Okay,
we just
fine.
should remind everybody of that
and we can
again.
argue about Grover Cleveland, but at the end of the day, the rule book has been open since the Constitution was formed, and he lost. So here's what we're going to do. And we can do this at the beginning of the next
reminding us that he won. I find that very, and then he's still looking for those
Let
3
me get
million.
to Kamala.
Okay.
Let me get to Kamala.
He's still looking for those 3 million.
So, and it's so sad because she's so lovely and attractive. You know, why does she have to say this stuff online? I look at this, and I have started just thinking, I'm going to vote against what Kamala Harris says. That's what I've atrophied into. And this is somebody who actually just voted for a Democrat in the primaries. I did vote for Jess Phoenix. I don't know if I can say that online, but I did. So, because I think it's very important to vote for who you choose as second place because it sends a big message. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I'm just going to go through here, and I'm going to say my one-liner that's a response to her one-liner, and then you can say your one-liner in defense of her, because I'm sure you're going to defend her.
Okay.
But this is what I've started doing, and I think we'll just make a segment out of this, calling it Keeping Up with Kamala instead of the Kardashians. That's the only time you'll ever hear me say the word Cardashians, okay?
And it is more relevant to us than keeping up with the president.
Okay,
I don't think we could possibly analyze that. There's too much psych required.
Okay, so here we go. Kamala Harris tweeted, I'm calling on Kirstjen Nielsen to resign as Secretary of Homeland Security. Under her watch, our government has committed human rights abuses by breaking up families along the southern border, and she has failed to be accountable to the and transparent to the American people. My one-liner in return is, and this is just coming off the top of my head, is I'm thinking, since when have you cared about transparency and firing government officials? I am sensitive to hypocrisy, and you never called for one of Barack's people to be fired.
My response is, this is a Norwegian American who doesn't even know probably where Norway is. And I had lived in Norway, so I can point to it. But more importantly, her policies are in effect in violation of not being in accord with the international agreements that this country signed with many other leaders coming out of World War II.
Okay, that was more than one
beyond.
sentence. Okay, that was decent. Okay, here's another one. 6 hours ago, she said, Donald Trump wants to fill this SCOTUS vacancy with a justice who will overturn Roe versus Wade. Here's what this is really about: punishing women for wanting to control their bodies, their lives, and their future. I can't stand this. She's an influential woman, and this kind of fear-mongering...
Sounds like President Trump's fear-mongering.
Okay, you don't fight fire with fire, though, and my teachers told me that two wrongs don't make a right. This kind of fear-mongering that women will be punished for wanting to control their bodies, their lives, and their futures. First off, abortion on demand is not about control as much as convenience many times. Yes, life of the mother, incest, rape, those cases we all know are heartbreaking but necessary. But to say that this is to overturn Roe versus Wade, I feel is fear-mongering, not becoming of somebody who's a presidential candidate.
Well, I think we have to see this. We are going to see some fear-mongering here. And yes, touching this subject is like touching the third rail. We've got to be very, very careful. And as a Christian, I'm always challenged with this concept of how we handle pro-birth versus how we take care of the mothers afterwards, and how do we raise these kids afterwards. I think that kind of language that was used is inflammatory. And yes, it is designed to get people out to the polls. And is it incendiary? Absolutely. But we listen to a president who does this all day long. And senators and congressmen, many of which do not sound even remotely intelligent or balanced.
Okay, here's the last one. Minimum wage doesn't cover the rent anywhere in the U.S. And an economy that only works for those at the very top is an economy that is broken. Okay. Together we can build a country with a living minimum wage, affordable child care, paid family leave, and tuition-free college. I just look at that, and to a certain extent, I don't even know where to start, because I think Republicans are accused so often of being science deniers, but the science of all four things she just mentioned show nothing but economic ruin. I lived in Argentina with tuition-free college, economically ruined. Paid family leave, who pays for it? Affordable child care, who pays for it? And everybody knows when you raise the minimum wage, you hurt the poor and the minorities first. So how on earth can you espouse all four ideals?
Well, let's go back to the first part, and that is related to Argentina. People have been trying to fix Argentina for a long time, and that's a bad place to get your experience about what's going to happen in this country, because it hasn't worked. The part about the minimum wage...
So you're saying socialist examples in other countries don't...
The studies that have been shown about the minimum wage continue to show that raising the minimum wage helps the majority of people in that area of the country where it's happened, whether it was in the Northwest or in the state of California. We're finding that most businesses are not being squeezed. They're finding a way, as they always have, to either find a way to raise prices or find a way to fix the situation. So to give people a living minimum wage is an essential part of what we've always wanted to do in this country.
Okay, we're going to argue this when we get back. This is Problem Stupid Politics.
Hometown.
If you see a traffic problem in our valley and would like to let us know, call the traffic tip line at 298-KHTS. That's 298-5487. 298-KHTS.
98.1 FM and AM 1220.
Men, are you feeling tired, stressed, or just don't have the energy you used to? Did you know this could be related to decreased testosterone levels? Luckily, there's a safe, effective solution. Weeder Prime helps support healthy testosterone levels with clinically tested key ingredients. Just 2 capsules of Weeder Prime each day can help change your mood, energy, focus, body fat, and lean muscle. Feel the way you felt 10, 20, even 30 years ago. Rediscover your Prime with Weeder Prime. To find a retailer near you, visit WeederPrime.com. That's WEIDER Prime.com.
The SCV Pregnancy Center has provided compassionate, personalized, and confidential care for 30 years.
Angela Bennett, CEO.
Positive urine test does not confirm pregnancy. It only indicates you may be pregnant. Only a doctor can diagnose and confirm pregnancy. If you used a home test and need answers immediately, the SCV Pregnancy Center will provide immediate pregnancy test results and uses the latest technology to confirm and diagnose pregnancy. The center specializes in pregnancy testing and confirmations. Make your appointment today.
Visit scvpregnancycenter.org.
All services free and confidential.
All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. This is Cardon Ellis with Mark Murphy.
Keeping it moderate.
Keeping it moderate, okay. The guy that just advocated for a massive hike in minimum wage is keeping it moderate.
It's paying off. Well, we have so many studies now based on the experience up at the Northwest and in the state of California.
Of all the restaurants going out of business.
The business growth continues. Right now we have the lowest unemployment in the state since the 90s. And what's really exciting is we have a business growth rate now that is exceeding what they thought would possibly occur. Okay. And we have a shortage of employees. And so I'm going, if you have a severe shortage of employees, you raise it to a living minimum wage. And I'm not
hold on.
Okay, so hold on. Wage.
Let me just unpack really fast what the Democrat on the show just said. He acknowledged that by hiring a businessman to assist in the running of our economy, that we have experienced massive growth, also known as the Trump bump. Thank you for acknowledging that.
Oh, no.
That black youth unemployment is the lowest it's been since the 20s. African-American unemployment is the lowest it's been since the 30s. And that we now have more job openings than we have workers for the first time in decades, like it is now.
Unfortunately, only a Republican would believe that the actions taken by the federal government would have an impact immediately and not take several years. We are seeing right now the end of the Barack bump and how he turned around the collapse of 2007, 2008, 2009, and how we turned that around. Now what we're looking at is a gentleman who knows best about how to bankrupt a company. He did that over 5 times. He has simply learned how to work in real estate, and he was given a big paycheck to start.
Just hold on a second. But this is what I'm talking about when I talk about I really think Trump derangement syndrome at this point is becoming a religion.
Oh, already.
Because hold on a second.
The growth went down.
No, but just hold on. Let me finish here.
We're less than 3%.
You literally
nationally at 3%.
Before just being willing to admit that the investment class finally feels comfortable enough to invest in America infrastructure again because Donald Trump is in office, for better or for worse, instead of just admitting that the Trump bump is real, you would rather try and say that this is leftover from a presidency that could not get our economic growth above 3%, and we're now
coming out of a negative? I think that's fantastic.
No, look, I'm not asking whether or not it's coming out of a negative. It's fantastic.
This is a guy who's trying to destroy the tariff system.
But this is like what neo-Nazis do. I'm sorry. I'm going to use this example. I'm going to take fascists and neo-Nazis.
Let's take GM. GM gets 40% of the parts from overseas. We look at Toyota. Toyota builds over 1.5 million vehicles here in the United States. So when we talk about putting in tariff requirements the way we are right now, and you turn around and you say to our allies that have been the closest support of us for many years, like Germany, I'm talking about recently, Germany and Canada, for example, or England, we turn around and we now punish them.
Our listeners get what you're going to make. We've heard this antitrust stuff all week, but this is what I want to know.
He deserves it.
Okay, hold on.
He doesn't know how to do this.
We're not arguing whether he deserves it or not. This is what I want to know. Is if it weren't so sad, I laugh at a lot of these white supremacists, and there are very few of them left, but they actually
I put some in jail. I know, actually
because
believe
you did
that
such
they're
a good job.
Good.
You did such a good job. There's so few left.
Well,
but the so few that are left.
That's good.
I kind of, if it weren't so sad, I would laugh at this idea that supposedly, for example, in the Charlottesville, not riots, but the incident that preceded the riots, they were saying Jews will not replace us, right? I want to sit one of these young men down and say, bro, what data, what anecdotal story, what instance in your life were you ever replaced, or is any of your family or your friends ever just straight up replaced by an Israeli? How is that? How has your mind so latched on to this that you're actually going to march with a tiki torch around a Confederate statue, believing it, right? So to a certain extent, I want to say, Mark, like, hold on a second. How can you honestly believe that the Trump bump isn't the Trump bump, but is the leftover good karma of this messianical Barack Obama?
It's absolutely true. I mean, I'm looking at what's happening. Now we're starting to see the tax policies, the tax reductions, the changes that were made. They just take effect now. We haven't had time to go through the investment side. Now, I'm part of the and I am part of the investment class. So I do quite well when the wealthy are given a massive tax break.
With that logic, will you admit that the progress and the financial prosperity of us throughout the 90s was really just the afterburner of Bush Sr.'s economic policies put in place and Ronald Reagan? Because if you're going to say that the Trump bump is really just the 8 years of Barack Obama, you have to be willing to tear down the economic reputation of Bill Clinton and say that was really the blowback and the afterburner of Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush. Are you prepared to say that at 7:58 and 29 seconds
and
to
look
all your
what
Democrat
happens.
friends
look
listening?
at your last year in office. Where is that number going?
Are you
Watch
gonna say
the
it?
trend. And in those cases, they spent the next year or two living off the death march put in place by their predecessor. Now,
well, so was the economic prosperity of the 90s due to... Hold on. But I'm taking your logic, and I'm going to pry this out of you. We got 30 seconds left.
Already, the economic quarter this past quarter did not do as well as predicted.
No, I'm not talking about this quarter. I'm saying, is the economic prosperity of the 90s, the economic prosperity of the 90s due to Bush and Ronald Reagan Sr., according to your logic, that the economic prosperity of this past year is due to Barack Obama?
The first year or two are always due to the predecessors, up or down.
Okay.
And that is why Obama suffered dramatically in his first year in office.
Okay, Mark Murphy just admitted that the economic prosperity of the 90s under Bill Clinton was due to a bunch of Republicans. This is Problem Solver Politics.